Hi guys, welcome to my channel. In today's tutorial, we'll be making this milkmaid top. If it's something you're interested in, then let's get started. From my shoulder, I'm going to mark my bust point, which is 10 inches. After that, I'm going to mark my under bust. That will also be from my shoulder. So my under bust is 13 inches. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to connect my lines. I'm going to measure my top length after that. My top length is around 23 inches. From my bust point, I'm going to go down by 6 inches. This will be my waistline. I'm going to label my line, bust line, under bust, waistline, then my top length. After that, I'm going to mark half of my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. Then I'll mark my neck measurement, which is 3 inches. On my shoulder measurement, I'll go down by 1 inch. This will be my shoulder slope. Then I'll connect it to my neck measurement. From my shoulder, I'm going to measure my armhole length. To get this, all I did was to divide my bust by 6. Then I added 1.5. After that, I drew a straight line to connect to the point from my shoulder. I'm going to extend the line. I'm going to label it my chest line. The next thing I'm going to do is to get the midpoint of my armhole opening, which is 3.5. From the midpoint, I'm going to go in by half of an inch. Then I'm going to measure quarter of my bust measurement plus 1.5 inches sewing allowance. After that, I'm going to connect my points. On my bust line, I'm going to measure half of my nipple to nipple measurement. My nipple to nipple measurement is 7, so half of it is 3.5. I'm going to measure it to my bust line, under bust, my waist, and my top length. I'm going to connect them with a straight line. On my waistline, I'm going to measure half an inch on both sides. Then I'm going to connect my lines from my bust line to my waistline and from my waistline to my top length. After I'm done marking out my darts on my waistline, I'm going to measure quarter of my waist. I'm going to mark it. Then I'm going to replace the 1 inch dart intake I took. Then I'm going to add 1.5 inches sewing allowance to it. I'll be marking the same thing on my top length. Once I'm done taking the measurements, I'm going to connect my lines. I'm just trying to extend my chest line because I'm going to need it. On my chest line, I'm going to go up by 1 inch. This is because I don't want my top to be too open, but you can leave yours at the chest line if you like. I'll go back to my shoulder to measure half of my shoulder. After that, I'm going to connect it to the nipple to nipple point on my bust line. On the side going towards the side seam, I'm going to go out by 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to mark it. Then on the one going towards the center front, I'm going to go out by 1 inch. After that, I'm going to connect them with a curve to the bust line. On the chest line, I'm going to measure the dart intake I took. Then I will replace it back. Then I'll be connecting my lines again. From the dart of the waistline, I'm going to create a straight line to the under bust. I'll do the same for the other side too. Then I'll go in with my curve rule to reshape them. Once I'm done with that, I'll cut out my pattern. I'm going to place the top piece on another pattern paper to cut out 2 pieces of it. I'll go ahead and cut out the other pattern too. I will be using this pattern to cut out my back fabric. If you're not lazy like me, you can go ahead and cut out your back pattern. So guys, I've already cut out my front piece. For the bust part, the center front was on a fold and I added half an inch on all the sides. For the side going towards the side seam, these are the places I added sewing allowance. For the lower part, I added half an inch on the top, then I added 1 inch on the bottom. This will be for the folding with the lining. To cut out my lining is actually short by 1 inch. Back to the bust part. For this part, we are going to do a slash and spread method. You You can actually cut yours into two and just leave enough allowance that you want. But I'm going to measure 1 inch interval on the pattern, then I'm going to cut it out. Before cutting it, I'm going to label it 1, 2, 3 till I get to the end. I've actually cut this out. All I did was to measure 1 inch interval between the patterns and I left half an inch sewing allowance on the top and bottom parts. Once I'm done with the front piece, I'm going to cut out my back piece. The first thing I did was to roll out the zipper allowance, which was 1.5 inches. After that, I went ahead to place my front piece on it. You will notice that I place it exactly at where I drew the zipper allowance. Then I'm going to place the bust part immediately after the under piece. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to cut out the back piece. The next thing I'm going to do is place the lower front pattern on the back piece. Then I'm going to just cut out the 1 inches I added on the chest line because the back does not have a bust here. I hope you understand this. After I'm done cutting the back piece, I'm going to go ahead and cut out my sleeve. For my sleeve, I'm going to fold the edges of the ankara into two, then I'll fold it again. That makes it 4 times because I just want to cut both sleeve at the same time. I'm going to measure the length of my sleeve. The length of my sleeve is actually 25, but I made it 28 because I want it to be quite long. On the edge of the sleeve, I'm going to go down by 3 inches. I'm going to mark it. Then I'm going to draw a curve to meet the 3 inches. After that, I'm going to cut out my sleeve. Once I'm done with the sleeve, I'm going to start sewing. I'm going to stitch the upper parts, I mean the 3 pieces. I'm going to stitch them together. For the other part of the bust here, I'm going to make gathers on the top and on the bottom. So I'm just going to stitch it with a straight stitch, then I'm going to gather them. For the lower parts, the first thing I'm going to stitch is the bottom part. Then I'm going to stitch up the side seam. I'll pull it up, I'll stitch up the side seam. I'll leave the opening, the up parts, I'll leave it opened. For the back, I'm going to do the same thing. I'll stitch the bottom part, then I'm going to pull it up. I'll go ahead and stitch the upper part next. Then I'm going to sew the side seams. Then I'll pull it out from the armhole opening. So guys, I'm done stitching the back. The next thing I'm going to do is to join them by the zipper allowance. Then I'm going to fix my zip. This is the front part, I mean the bust parts. I've already stitched them up. This is how it looks like. After that, I'm going to gather the other part of the bust here. Then when I'm done with it, I'm going to stitch it on the other one. Please note that you'll be stitching on the wrong side, so when you flip it over, the gathered part will be in front. So guys, this is what it looks like once I was done with it. I'm also going to gather the lower part, then I'm going to stitch it to the bust here. After stitching it, this is what it looks like. The next thing I'm going to do is to join the front piece together, the lower part and the upper part. I'm going to stitch them together. This is what it looks like after stitching. Once I'm done, I'm going to attach the front and back. I'm going to stitch them together next. Next I'm going to do is to sew the sleeve. I've already measured where I want to place my elastic. What I'm going to do is to make a channel by sewing bias on the line. Then I'm going to pass my elastic through the bias. Once I'm done with all of that, I'm going to also stitch the hem of the sleeve. I've already stitched my bias form on the sleeve. Then I'm going to pass my elastic through the bias. Once I'm done passing the elastic, I'm going to stitch the sleeve up. The next thing I'm going to do is to attach my sleeve to my body. After attaching the sleeve to the bodies, I'm going to sew bias around the sleeve, the upper part of the sleeve. Then I'll pass my elastic through the bias. Then we are done with our top. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Bye.